They didn't see it coming. One word, softly spoken, no dramatics, no raised voice. Just Meri, seated across from Kody and Robyn, locking eyes and saying the word that would change everything. Appraisal. The air froze. You could almost see the panic crawl up Kody's chest as she said it again, calmly, clearly. Appraisal. At that moment, he coughed, stumbled through his words like they'd suddenly turned to gravel in his throat, grasping for anything that would disguise the alarm pulsing in his eyes. And Robyn? She tensed like someone had pulled a wire. Her usual rehearsed softness dropped for just half a second. That was all it took for the viewers to see it. Real fear. They thought they were having another one of those endless conversations about Coyote Pass. Land talk, future dream homes, cash flow illusions. The kind of talks that sound like planning, but really just circle around without ever landing on action. But this wasn't just talk anymore. Meri had called the bluff. And suddenly, the energy in the room flipped. Because this wasn't about square footage or parcel lines anymore. This was about truth. Cold, documented, balanced truth. Which is something this family, at least certain members of it, has spent years avoiding like it's radioactive. See, for years, Kody has claimed over and over that the family bought Coyote Pass together, that everybody paid into it. Equal sacrifice, equal ownership. One big plural family dream. Standard Kody speak. But here's the uncomfortable part. No one's ever seen the math. We've heard the words, but numbers, receipts, facts? Nothing. And for the longest time, most of the wives went along with it. Trusted him. Or maybe they were just tired. Or loyal. Or stuck. But whatever gave it momentum before, Christine gone, Janelle done, Meri changed, it's gone now. And when Meri dropped that one word into the room, she wasn't asking for an argument. She was asking for a number. And that terrified them, because asking for an appraisal doesn't just mean checking what the land is worth. It forces accountability. It unravels the claim that everyone paid the same. It brings up questions they don't want to answer. Who contributed funds? Who didn't? Where did the family account begin, and where did individual wallets get drained to keep one household ticking? And let's be clear, this wasn't a battle cry. Meri didn't roar or fight. She was surgical, precise. It was the quiet confidence of someone who's been underestimated for too long. You could see in that moment, when Kody sputtered and Robyn blurted a contradiction before he could even finish his sentence, that this wasn't a power play. It was exposure. An appraisal shines a light, and for certain people at that table, shadows have been more comfortable. That's why it hits so hard, because Kody loves narrative control, has for years. He talks fast, keeps the camera moving, keeps emotions stirred, creates the illusion that everything is too complicated to question. And Robyn backs it up with layered emotion, crying when needed, soft-shaming when it suits her, shifting timelines and meanings like it's a game of telephone. But you can't cry your way past numbers. You can't soften a spreadsheet. That's what makes this bomb so brutal. The moment Meri called for an outside professional opinion, the usual tricks stopped working. And beneath that, there's something even darker they don't want to confront. What if the family money didn't just disappear? What if it was funneled quietly, consistently, into one direction over and over again? What if all the sacrifice really did come from the same three women, while the benefits gathered in neat little piles in one single household? For years, Meri was loyal. To a fault. She stuck around longer than most would have. She took the blame, absorbed the humiliation, grasped at the crumbs of attention offered to her. But not anymore. This version of Meri, she thinks differently now. She isn't fighting for love. She's watching, calculating. And when she speaks up now, it's not out of desperation. It's strategy. And then comes the moment that stripped away all remaining subtlety. Kody fumbles through a half-baked idea about maybe selling Coyote Pass. And Robyn immediately shoots it down. He looks at her, stunned. She's supposed to follow his lead, but in that moment, she contradicts him. On camera, in real time. And for once, the cracks don't even try to hide. That's when we see the truth. They weren't unified. They were a team built on control, and nothing exposes control issues faster than losing grip. So when Meri calmly reminded them that Flagstaff has plenty of appraisers, it wasn't just logistics. It was a shot across the bow. Not for war, but for justice. And that moment, it didn't just shake the room, it reset the power dynamic entirely. And the scariest part for Kody and Robyn isn't what Meri said. It's what might come after she says it again. For years, Kody repeated the same line like it was gospel. Everyone paid equally for Coyote Pass. Everyone sacrificed. Everyone contributed. And for a while, most people believed him. Or at least, they didn't challenge it out loud. Why would they? Questioning the financial structure meant pulling on threads that could unravel the only thing holding the whole arrangement together. Illusion. But the problem with repeating a story too many times is that somewhere along the path, you start contradicting yourself. And Kody has done that. More than once. Whether he realizes it or not, the footage exists. The admissions are there. Tiny slips hidden between bombastic statements or mumbled excuses. More than enough for viewers, and now his former wives, to start connecting the dots. Think back to how he explained the family budget in earlier seasons. There was always this vague notion of a family pot, one shared bank account, equal responsibility, everyone understanding each other's needs and acting for the collective good. But you never saw a spreadsheet. You never saw the rules, and that's not by accident. Because the truth? There were different standards applied to different households. Always. Listen closely and you'll catch it. In one episode, Kody insists Christine should use her income from selling LuLaRoe to cover home costs. Meanwhile, Robyn is buying expensive home decor and spending family resources without anyone blinking. In another conversation, Janelle states clearly that she used her own money for her purchases, including major family buys. And you can hear the exhaustion in her voice, the sting of it all being treated as expected. And yet, when Robyn needed a down payment for her $900,000 house, suddenly the family pot was back. Then that nebulous concept kicked in again. Somehow, there was enough collective concern to secure her loans, while the others navigated their expenses like solo contestants on a rigged game show. This isn't speculation. The reactions, the stories, the inconsistencies, they're documented, aired, and edited into the very show that tried to present unity. That's why the word receipts carries so much weight. It's not just paper trails, it's accountability. It's saying, let's stop pretending this was equal when some people were navigating survival while others lived worry-free. And when you bring up receipts to people who have built their version of the truth by dodging them, that's where the panic comes in. When Christine left, part of her breaking point was the surgery for her daughter Isabel. Not only did Kody skip the trip, he questioned why his presence mattered. But more than that, he didn't offer meaningful help for the costs. And yet, this is the same man who, in another scene, talks about sacrifices he's made for the family. Sacrifices that often seem to conveniently benefit a specific home address more than the group. What started to crystallize after that moment was something viewers felt but couldn't fully name. A hierarchy. Not everyone was standing on the same ground. The original wives had been putting in for years, financially, emotionally, physically, sharing resources, working jobs, raising kids, keeping things afloat. But the returns? They weren't shared. They were collected, consolidated, and protected. There's a moment where Kody stumbles during a discussion on parcel division. As Janelle pushes for fairness in land ownership, you can see him retreat into this fog of flustered math, dodging direct answers. He blames paperwork, planning, the future, but not once does he reach for documents. Not once does he say, "Here's what everyone paid." Because he doesn't want to. Because if he did, the whole mirage would collapse. And Robyn, she doesn't flinch often, but when she hears words like appraisal or receipts, she moves faster than anyone. She cuts people off mid-sentence. She redirects, spins, emotionalizes. And why? Because the second you bring in objective measures, emotional logic no longer works. You can't cry your way through an appraisal. So now, when Meri opens the door to a professional breakdown of costs and contributions, it's not just a discussion, it's an alarm. The idea that an unbiased source could walk in, look at the land, the contribution history, the legal titles, and say, "This isn't equal," threatens to expose years' worth of careful sidestepping. And that's what's so telling about the reaction. Kody didn't say, "That's a great idea, let's be transparent." Robyn didn't say, "Let's be fair to everyone." Instead, they flinched like someone pulled a fire alarm. Because once numbers start doing the talking, all the manipulation has to take a seat. And what's left behind? A painfully clear outline of who gave, who took, and who benefited while calling it sacrifice. And Meri? She's not just calling for math. She's calling for memory. The kind Kody hoped no one kept. The kind Robyn can't rewrite. Christine tried. For years, she played by the rules. She followed the plan, trusted the words, stretched her patience, and believed that sacrifice would mean something, that loyalty would be met with equal effort. But the moment her daughter needed surgery, all of that cracked. And the pieces didn't fall slowly. They shattered. Isabel's scoliosis wasn't a new discovery. It wasn't a surprise condition that crept up overnight. It was discussed, documented, filmed. Christine brought it up with urgency and clarity. Her daughter was in pain. Her spine was curving. She needed help. A surgery was scheduled out of state. Logistics were complicated. Money was tight. And one thing was absolutely certain. This wasn't a want. It was a need. She told Kody. She told him what was happening, what she was doing, how the trip would work. She didn't ask for the moon. She didn't demand luxury. She asked him to show up. As a father, as a partner, as someone who had stood on camera for over a decade saying family comes first. And what did he do? He backed out. He rationalized. He minimized. He said he didn't feel comfortable traveling. He blamed protocol, logistics, pandemic stress. But Christine saw through it. Everyone did. These aren't hypothetical people. They're his children, his own blood. Yet Isabel's pain never seemed urgent to him. And that silence around the costs, it spoke louder than any speech he gave about sacrifice. Because meanwhile, back in Arizona, his energy was nowhere near low. He was fully involved in Robyn's home, helping with school schedules, decorating, babysitting, visiting the mall, shopping, posing as the ever-engaged dad. That version of him was thriving, confident, committed, but the version that made eye contact with Christine and offered support? Gone. And Christine knew. That was the turning point. She didn't ask herself if he loved her. She asked herself if he'd ever fight for her. And the answer sat there, quietly, every day of that hospital trip without him. But this isn't just about emotion. This betrayal was bought and paid for in full. When Christine moved to Utah after the split, fans were shocked to learn she didn't retain her full share of Arizona property. After all she'd been through, all she'd contributed, the division wasn't clean. And it boiled down to something deeply unsettling. Christine used her own proceeds from the Vegas home she sold to help pay for that property, Coyote Pass, land she doesn't even live on now. Let that settle in. Christine took real money earned through real sacrifice, cashed out her home after years spent raising kids, bent over backwards for this dream land, and then quietly exited with less than she put in. Compare that to Robyn, who still owns her home, lives comfortably, enjoys Kody's full attention, and has never once appeared to lack his full financial backing. And somewhere inside this imbalance lives the truth that rarely gets named outright. Christine didn't walk away from a man. She walked away from a system built to drain her and reward someone else. And this isn't bitterness. It's math. It's effort weighed against outcome. Christine cooked for dozens, parented children who later called her the glue, worked side hustles, and filled emotional gaps left by Kody's inconsistency for years. And when time came for that investment to be returned, not in riches, just in reliability, nothing came back. That's what cuts the deepest. Not the absence of love, but the absence of accountability. The refusal to acknowledge that while one half of the family raised children and covered costs, the other half lived with blind confidence, wrapped in Kody's protection and untouched by the same strain. What Christine lost financially wasn't just numbers. It was acknowledgement of what she gave, of what she carried, and of what she was promised. She didn't just leave behind a plural marriage. She left behind a pattern, one where sacrifice only ever flowed in one direction and never circled back. The cameras never lie. Not fully. You can edit scenes, shift music, cut for emotion, but you can't mask contradiction forever. And at some point, Sister Wives viewers started noticing something that didn't sit right. While Christine struggled to rearrange finances for her daughter's spine surgery, while Janelle worked to find housing solutions for her kids, the other household was shopping. Robyn's house, a fortress of curated comfort, floor-to-ceiling decor, expensive furniture, and in one unforgettable moment, dolls. Not just a few beloved childhood keepsakes either. Rooms filled, shelves lined, a whole collection, extravagant and excessive, with tags still attached on some of them. And then came the moment that sent the audience spinning. Robyn referring to multiple dolls as investments. It wasn't a one-off comment. It was delivered in the same breath that revealed this wasn't casual spending. It was intentional prioritizing. And that's where the disconnect became impossible to ignore. On one side, a mother was quietly packing her daughter's bag for a life-changing, physically painful medical procedure. On the other side, not just comforts, but luxuries were being stacked on shelves. This isn't about judging what brings someone joy. Everyone has a thing. Hobbies, nostalgia, collectibles. But what made this cut so deep for viewers wasn't the items, it was when they appeared. Moments after money had been deemed tight. Right after Christine mentioned needing help with costs. Right after Janelle hinted again that financial support had dried up when it mattered. And let's not forget, Robyn's home, the biggest and most expensive one of all, required help for that initial down payment. Publicly. It was a conversation caught on camera. Kody and even other wives openly discussed pooling family resources to secure her place, to make it happen. It wasn't a secret. But what wasn't explained was how that generosity vanished when it came time to support Christine's medical travel costs. Flights, hotel stays, co-pays. And that contrast is what made fans furious. Not because one household had comfort, but because the others had to beg for the bare minimum. Janelle had to squeeze her budget and live in a rental with almost no furniture. Christine had to coordinate surgery plans on her own and emotionally prep a teenage daughter for the fact that her father would not be there. And meanwhile, the wrapping paper in Robyn's house never seemed to run out. There's footage of Robyn throwing a party, decor everywhere, matching plates, decorative signs, gift bags, elaborate themes. And in parallel, there are scenes of Janelle's boys moving themselves into small spaces, taking on adult roles far too young. Carrying their own furniture, repeating lines to the camera like, "We'll be okay," because no one else was saying it to them. And through it all, Robyn rarely names this contrast. She talks frequently about how hard things are for her, how misunderstood she feels, how the family dynamic has changed, but she rarely, if ever, acknowledges the privilege that surrounds her. The home, the time, the protection, the financial backing. While others were handing over money and walking away with less each year, she collected comfort and called it fairness. So when viewers heard Kody say, on more than one occasion, that he's struggling, that he's spreading himself thin, that sacrifices have been made across the board, they remembered those shelves. Not symbolic sacrifices, not emotional burdens, literal, physical sacrifices. Money out of Janelle and Christine's hands. Homes sold, futures shifted. All while plastic packaging crinkled under the lights, in a house that never seemed to lack. That's why the conversation about an appraisal cuts so deep, because it's not just about dirt and parcels. It's about proof that the very people being asked to give the most were also being given the least. That daughters were being left behind while dolls were being boxed for display. That the word family was used like a shield, while behind it the balance was always tilted in the same direction. And when you see Christine's tired eyes, Janelle's quiet resolve, Meri's measured detachment, the pattern is clear. The ones carrying the emotional weight were forced to carry the financial burden too, while someone else held the receipt printer and called it fair. Under the heat of the Sedona sun, something cracked. It wasn't the red dirt roads or the surface tension between people pretending things were fine. It wasn't even the therapy retreat itself. It was the masks. The ones they'd all worn for years. Unity, peace, sisterhood. Especially Robyn's. Because out there, In the middle of so-called healing, the story that had been carefully maintained for over a decade started falling apart in broad daylight. Therapy, in theory, was meant to bring answers, resolution, maybe even clarity. But from the moment the group sat down with Nancy, you could feel Kody bristle. He didn't want a process. He wanted a platform. And that's a dangerous thing to offer someone who thrives on control. Robyn's turn came with a twist. She didn't lean in. She didn't open up. She said one thing quietly, then stepped back. "I don't trust her," she said. About Nancy, the trained therapist, the person tasked with untangling years of pain. And with that one sentence, Robyn revoked the premise of the retreat. She dismissed the authority of the guide before any emotional maps were even unfolded. Then came the physical retreat. She didn't just refuse to open up, she left, claimed a sudden backache, withdrew, let others talk while she stayed behind and disappeared from group exercises. Convenient pain, as Christine sarcastically pointed out later. And something in that moment finally shifted, because the others had shown up. They had flown in with heavy hearts, hoping, worrying. Janelle, guarded but present. Christine, reserved but willing to speak. Meri, even with all her history, still sat there prepared to engage. And Robyn? She walked in already checked out, already armed with an out, already preparing to position herself as the misunderstood outsider in her own marriage drama. But Christine did something not everyone expected. She spoke directly. She didn't pretend everything was okay anymore. She voiced what she'd swallowed for years. The pain, the loneliness, the resentment, the feeling that she had climbed mountains for this family and had been left invisible. And somehow, in her honesty, she found the one thing Robyn never quite caught: respect. Because Christine didn't dodge. She didn't blame a headache or a bad vibe. She stared straight through the narrative fog and told the truth. And as she did, the audience leaned in. Even Nancy, silent for a moment, let the truth sit there like thunder caught in still air. Then Kody tried to take it back. Control, that is. He talked over people, rushed through thoughts, claimed therapists like Nancy were too feminist, accused the process of bias before it even had a chance to breathe. And when that didn't work, he shattered. Slumped shoulders, angry heat, accusations flying at invisible targets. Everyone was lying, nobody was loyal, and suddenly the wives were responsible for everything, including his unhealed childhood. It was so loud, you almost missed what was happening beneath the noise. Kody wasn't collapsing from attack, he was crumbling from being seen. He thrives on chaos he directs, but in Sedona, he couldn't script what was said. The stage wasn't his, and faced with honesty he couldn't deflect, he flailed. One of the most telling moments came quietly. Nancy asked them to do a body placement exercise. Where do you stand in the family? Where do you place others? Robyn placed herself directly between Meri and Kody. A physical claim, unspoken but clear. And when Meri cried, when emotion spilled beyond polite silence, Robyn didn't offer comfort. She bristled. Angry not at the hurt, but that anyone dared name it. Then came the personality test, the one Robyn later said she never took. And viewers, wide-eyed, watched the footage. There she was, pen in hand, filling it out, laughing, talking about answers. Christine later said the results hinted that Robyn enjoyed drama. Robyn's response? Maybe someone else took the test for her. What broke under the Sedona sun wasn't their bond. That had been fractured long before. What broke was the ability to pretend anymore. Honesty stood taller than pity, and the audience finally saw who wanted solutions, and who only showed up to stay the victim. And Christine? She walked away not bitter, not angry, but done. And that was her most dangerous form. Not yelling, just finished. Robyn may have stayed behind, but Christine carried the only truth that no retreat could erase. Sometimes healing starts when you finally stop pretending anything is left to fix. She was the smallest voice in the room, the one who rarely complained, rarely demanded attention, and almost always smiled through the background noise of the Brown family chaos. Truly Grace Brown, soft-hearted, curious, eager to be included. She didn't ask much from anyone, And that's probably why so little was given to her in return. From the outside, she seemed fine. Sweet, quiet, a child tucked into the scenery of Sister Wives. A show so full of adult conflict that kids often became decor to the bigger stories. But quietly, gently, the story of Truly has always been one of the most painful and perhaps most overlooked. It starts years ago, when her health took a sudden and terrifying turn. Dehydration led to kidney failure. Rapid and life-threatening. Christine rushed her to the hospital. Emergency intervention. Doctors stunned at how close things had come. And where was Kody? Not there. He wasn't on that ambulance ride. He wasn't beside Christine holding Truly's hand while machines beeped. When a little girl's life flickered, her father didn't arrive until days later. And on camera, he said he didn't think it was that serious at first. That sentence still stings, because even if it hadn't been serious, the idea of downplaying your child's hospitalization, letting confusion or convenience delay your urgency, speaks volumes about how deeply priorities were, or weren't, set. Fast forward, and the distance didn't shrink. As Truly grew, she became another version of Christine, a presence that made Robyn uneasy and Kody distracted. Their bond was minimal, their moments awkward at best. You'd see him talk to her with a peculiar distance, like he wasn't quite sure how to relate, like she hadn't come from the same DNA. His tone gentler but disconnected. She was polite, always, but rarely comfortable. When Christine announced her separation, she made it clear Truly would be coming with her. Back to Utah. New beginning. And the crushing weight of that decision wasn't lost on anyone, especially Truly. For a while, Kody pretended to object. He claimed he'd miss her, called it shocking, called it unfair. But before Christine even loaded the moving truck, Truly herself said something quietly shattering. He's not around that much anyway. There it was. The truth wrapped neatly in a child's honesty. She had already known the distance, already absorbed it, adapted to it, coped with it. And if that didn't make every viewer's chest tighten, what followed next did. Truly didn't cry, didn't resist. She wasn't running from her father. She was simply walking away from someone who was never fully there to begin with. As Christine rebuilt, so did Truly. She blossomed, smiled more, grew a visible connection with David, Christine's now husband, who treated her like a daughter with ease, natural and warm, and she responded, effortlessly. No hesitation, no awkward stiffness. The kind of comfortable body language that only exists when a child feels safe. Like she matters, which made Kody's later comments all the more confusing. He once suggested that moving Truly further away would damage their relationship. But the irony hung in the air like a punchline. You cannot distance what was never close. You can't tear apart a bond that was never secured. He claimed Christine poisoned the kids against him, but the camera footage never lies. It showed what it showed. Christine facilitating phone calls, encouraging connection, inviting him to parent, waiting for him to step in. But he never did. And when he did appear, he brought lectures, burdens, expectations, not joy, not encouragement, not the lightness children crave from a parent, only weight, and Truly felt it. By the time school pictures with David started surfacing, it felt like the page had turned without much struggle. Truly now had someone who wasn't stepping in for Kody. He was simply present. No overcompensating gestures, just steady care, consistency. And that's the difference. Truly's story is not about resentment. She's too young for that. Too forgiving, probably. But what it is a reflection of what absence looks like when disguised as fatherhood, what silence becomes when stretched over years, and how, eventually, even the quietest child learns who's really in their corner. Christine didn't take Truly away out of spite. She gave her a chance to grow where love wasn't conditional. And Kody, he lost the opportunity to know one of the most quietly remarkable souls in his family. Not through Christine's choices, through his own. And no amount of screen time will ever change that. The move to Flagstaff was sold like a dream. A fresh start, cooler weather, trees, seasons, college opportunities. Kody stood in front of them, full of conviction. painting visions of a united family stretching across acres of pristine Arizona land. But looking back now, every wide-eyed promise feels like a setup. Because that move wasn't about the kids. It was about control. From the start, the timing made no sense. The Vegas houses weren't even sold yet. Christine's daughter, Gwendolyn, had just settled into a high school rhythm. Gabriel was thriving in Nevada. Relationships were stabilizing. But Kody brought the Flagstaff plan like it was a gift, not a bomb. He told them it would be the best decision for the family, that it would bring them closer, that Dayton needed to be near the college he chose, and that the family would benefit from being in a place with wider opportunity. But here's the truth. Only one household gained anything from that move, and it wasn't Christine's. It wasn't Janelle's. It was Robyn's. Because not long after they arrived, Robyn's family settled quickly into comfort. She secured the biggest, most expensive home. Her kids adapted without resistance, and Kody parked himself more permanently there than anywhere else. Meanwhile, Janelle bounced from rental to rental, later living in an RV, just to stake a claim on land that still hasn't produced a single foundation. Christine fought to keep her daughter emotionally stable through the devastating high school transition. Every one of her children suffered. Rootless, unseen, forgotten, while Kody buried himself deeper into what was now a clearly designated main household. And the others noticed. You can tell by how Janelle spoke about land meetings. Frustrated, tired, always having to push just to get her kids considered. Her sons were practically raising themselves by that point. She was doing all the heavy lifting. And still, no schooling plan, no housing plan, no timeline from Kody. Gabriel struggled the most. When told about the move, his reaction was clear. He didn't want it. And when it happened anyway, everything changed for him. He became quiet, withdrawn. Not because he was dramatic, but because no one fought for him. No one paused to protect his space. And the simplest truth remains the most damning. If the family truly prioritized the children, they had another option. They could have stayed. The older kids could have finished school in Vegas. Meri could have remained behind. The adults could have worked out a travel system. It wasn't impossible. It was inconvenient. And that's all it takes to push certain kids to the sidelines in this family. The moment it's not easy, their needs dissolve. When Christine later moved back to Utah, it wasn't spur of the moment. It was a correction, a reclaiming. It was a mother saying enough, that her children deserved better than being afterthoughts in a plan that never included them in the first place. But Kody still described the Flagstaff move as a success, one that just didn't go as planned. What he refuses to say is, it went exactly as planned. Robyn ended up with everything she needed. The rest were forced to keep quiet or pay the cost. And cost it did. Christine lost time. Janelle lost her house. The older kids lost their grounding. And when you ask them today, some of them will tell you straight. That move didn't save this family. It pushed it into free fall. And once they hit the ground, there was no one to catch them but the mothers who had protested the move from the very beginning. For the longest time, Meri played the role they expected, the quiet one, the forgotten first wife, the poster girl for loyalty without reward. She cried on cue, accepted crumbs, clung to hope that never came. And the others, especially Kody, got used to that version of her, the one who stayed at the edge of every family gathering, nodding through the discomfort with that tight, tired smile. But that Meri? She's gone. Somewhere between the family fragmentation, the passive-aggressive confessions, and the full unraveling of Kody's marriage circus, Meri stopped waiting to be chosen. And she didn't make a scene about it. She didn't scream or break down or demand the spotlight. No, she did something far more unnerving. She got quiet, intentional, calculated. And when a person who's been sidelined for years suddenly starts playing chess while everyone else is still tossing emotional checkers across the table, you pay attention. It started small. Subtle digs, quick glances, moments where her silence carried more threat than her words ever did. Kody mentioned her distance, and she didn't defend it. She let it sit. Robyn cried about feeling abandoned, and Meri only raised her eyebrow. That single expression said more than any monologue. It said, "I'm not buying this anymore." Once, she sat in heartbreak. Now, she sits in observation. The full shift became clear when Coyote Pass came up. Land meetings always sparked tension. But lately, Meri doesn't just attend, She studies, records every contradiction. And when Kody tries to swing the conversation into vague generalizations, Meri doesn't argue. She calmly brings up facts, deeds, appraisals, tax values. She uses the one thing Kody can't talk over: real data. And that's when it truly hits them. She's been documenting everything. When she nodded along in past meetings, she wasn't agreeing. She was memorizing, categorizing, filing away inconsistencies, watching every time Robyn co-signed a contradiction, every time Kody changed his mind mid-sentence. Meri isn't confused anymore. She's compiling receipts, real ones. What rattles Kody most isn't what she says, it's how calm she is when she says it. She now speaks like someone who knows the game, who knows the rules were rigged against her, and yet still learned how to play. It's a sharp departure from the woman who once waited by the phone, hoping for compliments that never came, who lingered near the edge of conversations, grasping for relevance. That woman begged for her place. This one, she knows she owns part of the land, and she's not letting anyone forget that. Viewers saw it when Meri suggested the appraisal. Robyn flinched, Kody stumbled, and Meri, she didn't blink. She watched, not with anger, with curiosity, like someone testing a theory and watching it prove correct. Robyn once cried and begged Meri to stay part of the bigger picture. But the picture Robyn speaks of doesn't include Meri as an equal. It includes her as a prop. And that's what makes Meri's shift so dangerous to their control. She no longer plays that role. The moment Robyn realized her emotional theatrics no longer worked on Meri, the faux sisterhood ended. The hugging, the platitudes, the staged laughter all vanished. When Meri packed her things without a single parting meltdown, Robyn stood at the door like someone rehearsing a sorrow that wasn't sticking. And Meri? She offered a polite, almost indifferent goodbye. For the first time, Robyn cried alone. Now, Meri keeps her moves subtle. She asks questions people can't answer. She stays quiet during conflicts, but manages to insert just enough clarity to make others squirm. Kody tried to pit her against Janelle, and she didn't fall for it. He claimed Janelle didn't like her, and instead of reacting, Meri simply acknowledged it. Not with sadness, but strategy. Because Meri knows something now. They expected her to be the weak one, which means they never kept an eye on her. That gave her time, space, silence. And in that silence, Meri became what none of them expected: a wild card. She's not trying to reunite the family. She's not asking to hold hands and sing through the chaos. She's settled into a new role: neutral, smart, and completely unwilling to be manipulated. And that makes her the biggest threat of all. The tension used to feel familiar, predictable. A raised voice here, a dramatic exit there. It was raw, yes, but still within the lines of television drama. But when Garrison died, the air shifted. It wasn't messiness anymore. It was tragedy. And suddenly, the cracks in the Brown family stopped being entertainment. They became a silence no one could ignore. He was Janelle's son, one of the quiet, steady presences in the background for years. Garrison didn't chase attention. He wasn't loud like some of his siblings, but he showed up, helped his mother, worked hard, spoke up when it mattered. He built a life outside the family spotlight, trying to find peace in a dynamic that rarely allowed it. And then, without warning, he was gone. The shock washed over everyone, not just the family, the fans, the viewers who had watched him grow up. People mourned him like someone they knew. Because, in a way, they did. They'd seen him hold his siblings, laugh awkwardly on camera, defend his mom, call out Kody's inconsistencies. He was real, and losing him felt too heavy to wrap in another season's arc. But what followed made the grief worse. Kody didn't reach out to Janelle. Not once. Not in the days after, not at the funeral, not in the weeks that followed. Janelle, in one of the season's most piercing moments, said it calmly. He hasn't called me, hasn't asked how I'm doing. The weight of those few words crushed everything else in that scene. Because this wasn't a separation anymore. This was a mother grieving her son alone, while the father of that child remained entirely absent. And people noticed. Viewers didn't excuse it. Not even the ones who had tried to see both sides when the marriages deteriorated. This was different. Death doesn't need a side, and silence in its shadow doesn't look like distance. It looks like rejection. The questions poured in. Why didn't he call her? Why didn't he show up? How was it possible that a man who once claimed to protect his family with a fury could disappear in its darkest hour? Then came the moment that broke trust completely. One of the services, stories say, stirred tension. Perhaps it was with cameras. Perhaps what was said or left unsaid. No one knows the details. For once, cameras were wisely kept at a distance. But the aftermath spoke volumes. Even McKelty, often the one to defend Robyn, to pull back from criticism, stepped away. Quietly. Her body language in later episodes told the full tale. The fracture wasn't just between exes anymore. It ran straight through lines once thought unbreakable. And Kody? He said little, fumbled through vague sentiments, talked about heartbreak while avoiding names, emotions without action, regret without repair. Savannah, another of Janelle's children, stayed silent, but fans could see the hurt in her eyes, the swell of things unspoken. She had been ignored for holidays, for birthdays. Now she was expected to sit in grief while the man meant to support her retreated behind a wall of excuses. The absence could no longer be disguised. Kody didn't just lose connection, he surrendered it, let it slip further away, one unreturned call at a time. And Robyn? She cried again. Of course she did, but no apology came, no ownership, just tears. As if feeling bad was a substitute for building a bridge back to the kids lost in the echo of power, pride, and preference. Janelle stood alone in nearly every frame that followed. She organized, she grieved, she carried the weight of memory and future. And she did it not because she wanted to prove something, but because there was no one else to do it. This wasn't drama anymore. It was the end of a family that never truly understood what it was. A man claiming to guide multiple households, but in the end, only walking with one. A woman who gave everything, receiving silence when she needed a voice. Children who had to grow up and grieve in the same breath. And so the question hangs in the air, one that can't be answered by any monologue or reunion pageant. When the person who's supposed to love your children as much as you do doesn't show up, not even in death, what does that reveal about the love they claim to offer all along? Let me know in the comments, because some truths hit so hard, they deserve more than silence. They deserve to be named. Done.